everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Emma, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jake. Jake, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Emma. Thanks for asking. I had a super quiet morning. Just me, my coffee, and absolutely zero human interaction, which honestly felt like a dream.
Oh, that tells me so much about you already. And actually, that is a perfect way to slide into today's topic, because we are talking about introverts and extroverts, what it means, how it affects your daily life, and why it matters more than most people think.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those topics that sounds simple on the surface, but once you start digging into it, once you really explore it, you realize there's a lot more going on underneath.
Exactly. And I want to say up front that this isn't about one type being better than the other. It's really just about understanding yourself and the people around you. So, Jake, let's start with the basics. How would you define introvert and extrovert in simple terms?
Sure. So at its core, the difference is really about energy, where you get your energy from. An introvert tends to recharge, to feel refreshed by spending time alone, whereas an extrovert gets their energy from being around other people, from socializing and interaction.
Right. And I think that's the key word, recharge, because a lot of people confuse introvert with shy, and those are actually two very different things. You can be an introvert and still be confident and social. You just need alone time afterward to recover, so to speak.
Totally. And on the flip side, extroverts aren't necessarily loud or attention-seeking. They just genuinely feel more alive, more energized when they're surrounded by people. The social setting fills them up rather than draining them.
That phrase, fills them up, is so useful. I love that image, like a battery. For introverts, socializing slowly drains the battery, and alone time charges it back up. For extroverts, it's the opposite.
Exactly. The battery analogy is probably the most common one people use, and I think it works really well because most people immediately get it. Like, oh, I know what it feels like when my battery is low.
So, Jake, I have to ask, where do you fall on this spectrum? Because you mentioned your quiet morning, and that already gives me a hint.
Yeah, I'm pretty solidly an introvert. Like, I enjoy spending time with people, I genuinely do. But after a big social event, a party, a work conference, even a long dinner, I need serious recovery time. I need to just go home, be alone, and decompress. That word decompress basically means to relax and release tension after something intense.
That's such a good word for it. And I think I'm more in the middle, honestly. I've heard the term ambivert, someone who has both introverted and extroverted qualities and kind of shifts depending on the situation.
Oh, yes. Ambiverts are actually really common. A lot of people assume everyone falls clearly into one category, but personality is more of a spectrum, and many people sit somewhere in the middle rather than at the extreme ends.
And that middle ground can actually be really useful. Like, I can push myself to be social when I need to, but I also genuinely enjoy my alone time. I don't feel guilty about staying in on a Friday night, but I also don't dread going to a party.
Right. Whereas I, as a proper introvert, sometimes have to mentally prepare myself for social events. Like, I'll actually think about it beforehand, plan what I'm going to talk about, how long I'll stay. People find that strange sometimes.
Wait, really? You plan conversations in advance?
Okay, it sounds weird when you say it like that, but yes, sometimes. Not word for word, obviously, but if I know I'm going to a networking event or meeting new people, I'll think about a few conversation topics, just so I don't feel caught off guard, unprepared, or surprised by the situation.
I actually think that's really smart, though. A lot of people, introverts especially, feel anxious in those situations, and having a few topics ready is basically a coping strategy. A coping strategy is a way you manage a difficult situation.
Exactly. And for introverts, social anxiety and introversion often get mixed up too, but they're different. An introvert might prefer being alone, but they don't necessarily feel fear or dread about social situations. Anxiety is more of an emotional response, a worry, whereas introversion is more about preference and energy.
That's a really important distinction. Distinction just means a clear difference between two things. Because telling someone who is introverted that they need to get over it or just be more social kind of misses the point entirely.
Yeah, it's like telling a left-handed person to just be right-handed. It doesn't work like that. It's not a problem to fix. It's just who you are.
I love that comparison. So let's talk about daily life. How does being an introvert actually show up in your everyday routines, Jake? Like concretely, in real situations.
Okay, so one big thing for me is that I need transition time. So if I've been in a meeting all morning, lots of talking, lots of people, I genuinely cannot jump straight into another social situation. I need at least a few minutes to myself, even if it's just walking to get coffee alone or sitting quietly for a bit.
Transition time. That's interesting. And I can imagine in a busy workplace, that's not always easy to get.
It really isn't. And sometimes colleagues think I'm being unfriendly or standoffish, meaning they think I'm cold or distant, because I don't always want to chat during lunch. But it's not about them. I just need that break.
Right. And that kind of misunderstanding is so common. Extroverted people often find it hard to understand why someone wouldn't want company, because for them, being around people feels natural and easy.
Exactly. My friend, who is a textbook extrovert, once said to me, "I don't understand how you can eat lunch alone and actually enjoy it." And I said, "I don't understand how you can eat lunch with 8 people and not feel exhausted by the end."
That is such a perfect example of how differently wired people can be. Differently wired, meaning the way your brain is naturally set up to work.
And neither of us was wrong. We were just describing our actual experience. I think that's what people need to hear more, that there's no right or wrong way to be. There's just your way.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about something I find really interesting, which is how introversion and extroversion play out, meaning how they appear or show up in different cultures. Because I think there's a cultural layer to this that a lot of people don't consider.
Oh, this is a great point. In many Western cultures, especially in countries like the United States, extroversion is kind of celebrated. Being outgoing, speaking up, being the life of the party, those things are seen as positive traits, as strengths.
Right, and introverts can sometimes feel like they're being pressured to perform in a way that doesn't feel natural. Like there's something wrong with them if they'd rather listen than talk.
Whereas in some East Asian cultures, for example, quietness and thoughtfulness are actually valued more. Listening is seen as respectful. Speaking less can show that you're taking things seriously, that you're being careful and deliberate.
Deliberate, meaning thoughtful and intentional, not rushed. I think that reframe, that change in perspective, is really valuable. Because what one culture sees as a weakness, another might see as a strength.
And even within a single country, it varies a lot. In a corporate setting, being loud and assertive might get you noticed. But in a creative or academic setting, being deep and focused might be what's valued.
So context really matters. And that's something I think introverts are actually quite good at. Reading the room, figuring out what's needed, rather than just defaulting to one mode.
That's true. And I'd say introverts tend to be good listeners, too. Genuinely good, not just politely waiting for their turn to talk.
Okay, that might have been a tiny dig at extroverts, but honestly, there's some truth to it. Listening is a real skill, and it doesn't get enough credit.
It really doesn't. And for language learners especially, this is interesting. Being a good listener can actually be a huge advantage. You absorb more, you notice patterns, you pick up on nuance, the small, subtle details in how people speak.
Oh, that's such a good point. And I think introverted language learners might actually prefer studying alone, reading, listening to podcasts, like this one, rather than jumping straight into conversations.
Which is completely valid. People learn differently. Some people need to practice speaking from day one to feel confident. Others need to build a strong internal foundation first, like filling a tank, before they feel ready to speak.
And both approaches can work. The key is knowing yourself well enough to figure out what works best for you, and then not judging yourself for it.
Exactly. I remember when I was learning Spanish, and I'm not fluent, let me be clear. I would spend weeks just listening and reading before I felt comfortable speaking. Some of my classmates thought I was being shy or afraid, but I just wasn't ready yet, and that was okay.
And when you did start speaking, did you feel more confident because of all that preparation?
Honestly, yes. I felt like I had a stronger base, a more solid foundation. So when I made mistakes, I could recognize them and correct them more quickly. I wasn't starting from scratch.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that patience, that willingness to sit with something before jumping in, is actually a real introverted strength.
100%. Though I will say you do have to push yourself at some point. You can't just listen forever and never speak.
Right. At some point, you have to take the leap. That idiom, take the leap, means to do something brave or risky, even when it feels scary.
And it's almost always worth it, even if it's uncomfortable at first. That discomfort, that awkward, uneasy feeling, is usually where the growth happens.
Okay, let's switch gears a little. I want to talk about relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, because I think the introvert-extrovert dynamic gets really interesting there. Do you think introverts and extroverts make good partners, either as friends or in a relationship?
Oh, it can absolutely work, but I think it takes a lot of communication and understanding. Like, if an extrovert wants to go out every weekend and the introvert needs to stay in, you need to find a middle ground, a compromise.
Right, and the introvert might feel pressured, while the extrovert might feel held back or bored. Neither feeling is wrong, it's just a mismatch in needs.
But the cool thing is, opposites can really complement each other too. The extrovert can pull the introvert out of their comfort zone occasionally, encourage them to try new things, and the introvert can help the extrovert slow down, reflect, have deeper one-on-one conversations.
I love that. The introvert brings depth, and the extrovert brings breadth. Breadth meaning width or range. Like one goes deep and one goes wide.
That's a great way to put it. And honestly, I think the most successful pairings, whether friends or partners, happen when both people genuinely respect the other person's way of operating, their way of being in the world.
And don't try to change them. That's the big one. You can encourage someone to try new things, but trying to fundamentally change someone's personality, that rarely works and usually just creates resentment.
Resentment. A strong feeling of frustration or bitterness, usually because you feel misunderstood or unfairly treated. Yeah, exactly. That's a recipe for conflict.
Now, I want to bring up something that I think a lot of introverts struggle with, and that's the workplace. Specifically things like open offices, group brainstorming sessions, and being expected to speak up in meetings.
Oh, this is a sore spot for me, honestly. I used to work in an open plan office where everyone sits together with no walls, and it was genuinely exhausting. There was constant noise, constant stimulation, and no quiet space to think deeply.
And deep thinking is often where introverts do their best work, right? They need that focus and quiet to really produce something good.
Totally. And research actually backs this up. Introverts often perform better when they have space for solitary, focused work. But in a lot of modern workplaces, the structure is built around constant collaboration and group energy, which naturally suits extroverts more.
Which raises a really interesting question. Is the modern workplace designed for extroverts? And if so, what does that mean for introverts who are trying to thrive, to succeed and do well in that environment?
I think the answer is yes. A lot of modern workplaces are implicitly, quietly, without saying it directly, designed for extroverted behavior. But I also think that's changing. Remote work has been a game changer for many introverts.
Oh, absolutely. I've spoken to so many people who said working from home transformed their productivity, completely changed it for the better, because suddenly they had control over their environment.
And they could do deep, focused work without interruptions. No one popping over to their desk to chat, no background noise, no pressure to perform sociability throughout the day.
Perform sociability. I like that phrase. It captures something real. A lot of introverts feel like they're putting on a performance at work, being sociable, cheerful, engaged, even when they're running on empty.
It's exhausting, and it can actually lead to burnout, that state of complete physical and emotional exhaustion over time, because you're spending so much energy on something that doesn't come naturally, and you have less left over for the actual work.
And I think it's worth saying, introverts can be incredibly successful leaders, great communicators, powerful public speakers. It's not about ability, it's about the internal cost of those activities.
Yes, exactly. Susan Cain, she wrote a famous book called Quiet, talks about how many of the world's most impactful leaders were introverts. Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, Rosa Parks. Being introverted does not mean being invisible or ineffective.
That book is such a good read, by the way. Or listen, it's on audiobook too. It really reframes introversion as a strength rather than a limitation.
And it gave a lot of introverts language, actual words to describe their experience, which I think was really powerful. Sometimes just having the vocabulary to explain yourself to others is genuinely life-changing.
That's such a good point. Having language for your experience helps you communicate your needs, set boundaries, set clear limits on what you're comfortable with, and feel less alone.
Because I think a lot of introverts, especially when they were growing up, felt like something was wrong with them. Like, why don't I want to go to the party? Why do I prefer reading in my room? And society often sent the message that those preferences were somehow lesser.
Which is such a shame. And as a language teacher, I think about this with students too. Some students are quiet in class, and people assume they're not engaged, not paying attention. But often they're actually processing very deeply. They're just doing it internally.
And if you force them to speak before they're ready, you can actually damage their confidence rather than build it. The pressure backfires. It has the opposite effect of what you intended.
So patience, again, is key, both for teachers and for the students themselves. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, meaning we've discussed many different aspects of this topic. Let's talk about some practical tips. What would you say to an introvert who feels like they're struggling in an extroverted world?
First thing I'd say is know yourself. Like, really understand your own patterns. Notice when you feel drained. Notice when you feel energized. And start planning your time with that in mind. Don't just go along with what everyone else is doing.
That self-awareness is really the foundation, isn't it? You can't make adjustments if you don't first understand what you actually need.
Exactly. And then I'd say communicate your needs clearly and without apology. There's nothing wrong with saying, I need some quiet time after that meeting. Or I'd prefer to send my ideas in writing rather than brainstorm out loud. Most reasonable people will understand.
And it's not making excuses. It's being honest about how you work best. And for the extroverts listening, what would you say to them?
I'd say check in with your introverted friends and colleagues before assuming they're fine. Sometimes the quiet person in the group is actually feeling overwhelmed, but doesn't want to make a fuss, doesn't want to create a scene or seem difficult.
And don't take it personally if an introvert cancels plans or needs alone time. It's almost never about you. It's about them needing to recharge.
Right. And try not to fill every silence in a conversation. Silence isn't awkward. It can actually be really comfortable and meaningful. Extroverts sometimes rush to fill silences without realizing that the other person was just thinking.
That is so real. I have definitely been guilty of that. Just talking to fill the space. And sometimes the best moments in a conversation happen right after a pause.
Absolutely. The pause gives people room to think, to go deeper. It's not a problem to solve. It's just a natural part of conversation.
Okay, Jake. Final question. And this is a good one. If you could tell your younger, more introverted self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'd say you don't have to perform extroversion to be valued. Your way of being in the world is not a flaw. It's not a mistake or a weakness. The things that make you feel different, needing quiet, thinking deeply, preferring one-on-one conversations, those are actually gifts, even if the world doesn't always treat them that way.
That is beautiful, Jake. I think a lot of people, introverts and extroverts alike, needed to hear that.
And I'd probably also tell my younger self to stop spending 3 hours mentally replaying every conversation after it happened.
Oh, that is so relatable. The classic introvert post-event recap. Going over everything you said and wondering if it came across the right way.
Every single time, without fail. Did I say something weird? Was that too much? Not enough? It's exhausting in hindsight.
Well, I think the key takeaway from today's conversation is that whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, or somewhere in between, all of it is valid. All of it has value. And understanding yourself is the first step to living in a way that actually feels right for you.
Perfectly said. And understanding others, having that empathy, that ability to see the world from someone else's perspective, makes everything easier. Relationships, workplaces, friendships, all of it.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I hope you learned something. Not just about English, but maybe about yourself, too. Jake, as always, it's been a joy having you.
Always a pleasure, Emma. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Go recharge however you need to.
Exactly. Go take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. Take care.